Welcome to iLearn's featured plenary speaker, Kurt Squire. He's going to speak to us tonight on Immersive XR for the pandemic. Get away, Kurt.
Great, thank you. So I'm Kurt Squire. I'm a professor at UC Irvine in the Connected Learning Lab in the Games Learning Society group in particular. I'll be joining me today are Max Collins and Lika Liu, two PhD students who've been doing kind of doing the real work, you might say, in XR and VR. So let's jump in. So here we are, right? We are now officially a year in. I do not have control of the screen right now, by the way. I'm trying to click and it's not working. Um, do anything? Okay, so here we are. I have now seem to have control. Um, and this kind of sums up my year. I don't know about you all. People here are playing Among Us, but this is kind of how the year has gone. I talked last year. I don't know if anyone was here for this, but it's funny. Even just going back and looking at my pictures, thinking how all of this was. I mean, it was a scary time for sure, and we were all quite anxious. But there was at least something kind of interesting about the idea that like, oh, we were all trying and learning new things. And I know my kids who've been in blended, they're just they've been in school for about a year. If you've been doing online learning for a year or so, I think whatever little charm it had wore off a while ago, and I think we're all just trying to limp over the finish line. At least is my perception. Watching teaching online, watching my kids go through it, talking to colleagues. It's we're really all just kind of doing all we can. Um, I want to briefly touch on some of the things that we're looking for in times of a global pandemic. Last year's talk, which has now subsequently been published in the Journal of E-Learning, so thank you everyone who gave me feedback and thanks for the discussion on it. We really saw a couple of things. Now, one of the first things that we saw was, if you remember, just going back, Plague Inc. was briefly and quickly on the charts. It's been on the charts since it came out 10 years ago. But this is the game, right, where you are where you are managing a global pandemic. And something that we saw early on was people trying to use games for information, for playing through fears. Something Tom Malaby has written about, if you're interested in this approach. Thinking about how can we use technologies as a way to, or games or other experiences, as a way to just kind of play through scenarios, almost like a version of therapy, right? Interestingly, Plague Inc. got taken down from the store in China. Which kind of affected its sales, but it was one of the things that people ran to. Second thing, of course, was Minecraft. People are still playing Minecraft, but we really saw a jump in Minecraft sales and play right away, particularly because people were looking for it as a place to go and to hold events like the one that we were in. It's also a place that you can go and hold events where kids can actually host people, right? So my kids can't have people over. They can't hang out in their room. They couldn't even at the time go to the park, but they can have folks over, hang out in Minecraft in their house, right? And we saw things like graduation ceremonies being held in Minecraft. This is from Quarantine University that students made. University of California, Berkeley actually had its own ceremonies as well. So this was kind of a thing. Part of that feature, though, is the comfort and coziness. So coziness in games is an idea that comes from Project Horseshoe. You can Google it if you're interested. But the idea is that a lot of times we will turn to games in times of comfort. Think of people who play solitaire or card games, games that have a familiar rhythm as a way to self-soothe, right? And so we were doing that a lot in games. Animal Crossing was one of the first things that really popped up. Fashion shows in Animal Crossing. There were some of my favorite, here's some more cozy games. Some of my favorite examples were the Museum of English Rural Life had a competition for people to design smocks. And really, again, games that provided us a sense of warmth, of comfort, of coziness were things that we really turned to. And Minecraft, again, in its own way, was also part of that. Third was really looking for places to go. Raft jumped right up, right? Blockly was another example of this. Minecraft, this was the Berkeley ceremony. But games that let us experience adventure, travel to new places, experience a different sense of place. So there's that Microsoft sales number. Fortnite, of course, this was again early on, was used for similar things. And what's been kind of interesting for me as someone who's been tracking this is how there was Among Us popped up by the end of the summer, and then from there it kind of seemed like there's some breaks on. There hasn't been a lot of sort of a lot of new innovation. I know, at least from my where I've been standing, I've been watching people kind of playing a lot of the same games. There've been a lot of continuation, but there hasn't been this sense of like, oh, we are collectively as a society trying some new things. There are some interesting examples, such as AOC having one of the most successful political fundraisers of the cycle in Among Us, right? So games continue to be a core metaphor that we look for when thinking about designing immersive experiences. Now, what I want to do is to kind of start to shift from there. Let me see, I can't get shift from there and think a little bit about what are some of the things that games are affording and what kinds of experiences, what can we learn about what our immersive environments for learning, for like things that kids were using are lacking, and then how can we think about designing new kinds of AR and experiences, AR and VR experiences to make up that gap. One of the key ideas, though, that I want to throw out there is this idea of an affluent distributed school system or infrastructure. This, again, came out of last year's talk, so thank you again, everyone. And what I want to argue are that there are three different forms of capital that we saw emerge. Material capital, so computers, broadband, desks, webcams, things like that. Those are my kids in their rooms that are set up that they, as middle-class kids, have access to. The second one is human capital, and I think this is where a second place where we have really seen massive inequities. So like my kids have essentially tutors on call or technicians, errand runners. Like we had to literally buy a new printer this week because theirs broke. Emotional support coaches, cheerleaders. That second image you can see there, I don't know how big it is in your screens, but that's colleague Kylie Pepler, some may know. They converted their garage into a office co-working space. They did probably the best job I've seen. But again, the key idea is it's not just the stuff there. They actually have people on call almost full time. And then the third area is structural capital. And what this means are these are forms like daily planners, check-in sheets, if you know like Scrum or Agile methodology, like tickets. But the idea that you have entire methods for managing your workflow, which some kids have access to, again, coming from your human capital, from a parent, teacher, or tutor, is an important form of capital that these kinds of families have access to. Now, what I want to argue that's kind of interesting is that affluent schools are so demanding, right? What it's like to go to a school like Irvine, where my kids are so demanding. They already had all of these things in place. So moving to virtual schooling was not quite as difficult, right? Compared, because they had to do 2 or 3 hours of homework a night, compared to other places where it was like, oh, we're starting from scratch, right? You don't have a dedicated workroom. You don't have a dedicated parent who the school system is trained to help them with homework every day, and you don't have these kinds of systems. So that's a little bit of a backdrop, and I think that's, to me, the most interesting set of questions coming out of COVID are what are we going to do for all of these people who do not have access to such resources, not continue to have access, and will perhaps fall behind. Like that metaphor, but that's one way to think about it. So second, when we do look at the kinds of things that people are doing, again, looking for cozy spaces, looking for places to go, looking for ways to congregate, what you see is that most of the tools, things like Canvas, there's some screenshots from my kid's Canvas, do not enable that, right? So if my kid is on Canvas right there, he really can't see who else is online. They can't see who's there, who's working on the same problems next to him. You know, something like this platform affords, right? I can know Max is over to my right. I know that Lika's over here. I can see people out in the room. None of that can happen. There's no sense of place whatsoever. A student using Canvas is in their room using Canvas. You don't say like, I'm going to go, you might say I log on to Canvas, but I'm going to go to Canvas, find someone else there, right? Of course, and kids are not allowed to really do or contribute much of anything. And then coziness, I think it goes without saying that the emotional tenor of an interface like that is not one that's designed to bring peace and harmony. It looks like work. Knowledge work. So the presence research really defines 3 different types. There's place presence, so a place that you can go and be in. There's social presence, which is your idea of you having an identity, a lived history, that you've got a role and a sense of something you can do there, which again, Canvas is super thin on, right? You can't leave your mark as a student on that. And then last, co-presence, that there's someone actually there with you. So what we're going to do is start to transition and talk a little bit about some of the research that we've been doing in our lab, trying to come up with approaches or tools that might help in this kind of a situation. Now, I want to emphasize that these are, intrepid PhD students working on projects. They're not going to solve all of these problems in one go. But I think my hope is that through these presentations, you might get a sense of where some of the more interesting, we think some of the more interesting questions are, and where we might be able to start taking a whack at making a difference in some of these areas. So I'm going to move aside, and Max, let you take over next.
Hey, thank you, Kurt. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the project that I've been working on for the last little while here. That is a project for remote collaborative experiences leveraging augmented reality, so AR. Something that we're interested in is thinking about, especially going into this pandemic. People are, largely working from home, working remotely. And then in educational scenarios specifically, they're forced to work in ways that are kind of unconventional, ways that their, learning doesn't typically happen outside of the classroom. So we're thinking on, how can we use augmented reality to try to ameliorate some of the friction points that are occurring now. So one of the research questions, the main research question, does demonstration leveraging AR enhance sense of co-presence between remote pairs collaborating in educational scenarios beyond what traditional teleconferencing may afford? So people kind of were pushed into Zoom all of a sudden about a year and a half ago, and we were thinking, what are some ways that AR could kind of make these Zoom experiences even more collaborative and more interesting for students and teachers alike. So we wanted to see if we could instill this feeling of handing objects through the screen to one another between participants, and build a tool that would be useful for instructors and students working in a remote model, collaborating with one another. And some of the points that we were thinking through while creating this was collaboration, engaging bodily engagement and movement, that sense of proprioception, engagement, the material itself, accessibility to materials, and reach, just the amount of students that you can reach with something like this. So when designing this experience, we built this on top of a previous project formerly known as Vismo or Visme. So it was a molecular visualizing tool. And we were using that kind of as the test bed for this experiment here, for this case study. So we were exploiting the capabilities of Zoom, or really any teleconferencing call platform. So you can do things like share a screen and share your video and audio. So that led to the design decision to use target images where you could rig digital data or like these models on top of. So using Unity and Vuforia to do that, the Vuforia plugin for Unity, the 3D game engine. And these target images can be on paper or textbooks or a computer screen. So on top of, I have a video coming in just a second, so it'll look a little bit more clear. But the basic use case flow would be multiple participants can join a Zoom meeting. The driver of an experience would be able to share their display, and they're displaying relevant target images that rig the desired AR assets onto the screen for all participants of the call. Participants of the meeting can then observe the presentation through the lens of their phone, to see the AR digital data overlaid onto the presentation slides. The participants can interact with the data and each other using the application, and do things like object manipulation, take remote control, and instill this sense of like sharing an object through the screen to each other. And I am curious, of course the video is not going to work. Fortunately, I think we just have to march on.
So I just messed that up.
Oh no. Go back here. Yeah, I think we'll just have to. It will let me.
John.
I'm gonna refresh here and see.
Share your screen and just put it on your thing and share your screen, but turn up the volume so it's going through the open mic.
All right. See, I'm trying to see how to even share my screen. On the
presenter tool, go to the.
But it's on my screen, right?
I think it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's actually my screen.
Oh, sorry.
I think I might be able to do it. Just a second. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Share desktop.
Hey.
Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of exciting.
Infinite.
You don't need to hear, but you can see this is the view from someone joining the call. Well, oh wow, this actually does look pretty confusing. Let me try and maximize this. This would be the view
There you
from
go.
somebody joining the like a presentation from the device running the application that allows them to see the AR material on top of a presentation. Play that again. You can see they're using on-screen manipulations here. This is recorded directly like from an iPhone to do things like manipulate the digital models and do things like take rotations and rescale objects. And you can see here that it's just like rigged to the device here to the target image. And the model being displayed is based on whatever target image is displayed. So that's why you can see the model changing based on the target image that the driver of the experience is showing. This is showing just remote collaboration. So the pencil is actually a visual representation of another remote user of their yaw, pitch, and roll and position in the scene relative to the model too. So the target image let us kind of situate people remotely relative to each other and relative to the data. So you could do things like point things out to a remote collaborator, take remote control, and show things on an object as if you were sharing an object in the same space together. That is all we really need to see there. I can stop sharing screen. And then, sure, why it's not just letting me move to the next slide. There we go. So really quickly, we did some evaluation here, looked at different conditions. I think I have to move quickly, but these were some of the preview, like a brief overview of the findings, that people felt that this was a good collaborative tool, being able to see the other person visually represented in the space digitally was helpful for people. Also, it was good for user engagement. People saw that there would be excitement built around something like this, especially in like classroom environments when it's remote teaching and remote learning has been really difficult for students and teachers in this last year and a half. And then also the sense of proprioception is kind of brought back to you with this. So that understanding of like how you're situated relative to yourself and the objects that you're looking at an object and maybe understanding that you're actually looking underneath it because you have to move your head and move your body to look underneath the thing. But that's just at a high level, and I think we're going to upload these slides so you can look in more detail later. And these are also just that I mentioned quickly. We looked at different conditions. So there was AR with on-screen manipulations where you can tap and do things like that to take manipulations of an object. AR without those on-screen manipulations. AR with on-screen manipulations plus remote demonstration, so you can remotely control an object, like a teacher wanted to show something to a student. And then two conditions with no AR, one of them having that remote control as well. And the takeaway here is just basically the overwhelming majority preferred AR with on-screen manipulations and remote demonstration. So being able to view things with augmented reality and then collaborate remotely with a remote participant. And then Lika, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Max. Hello, everyone. My name is Lika Liu, and I'm a current student, and I'm presenting you this project we've been doing last year. It's a VR project called Echo, a collaborative VR meditation for promoting social well-being. So in this project, we create a meditative experience that connects users through collaborative mindfulness tasks, such as breath synchronization. And this project seeks to leverage the forces of VR to alleviate social isolation. And we argue that a collaborative VR experience, meditation experience, specifically could provide the user a safe place to relax, enhance interpersonal connectedness, and also promote the user's social well-being. So as a motivation for this project is first, we all know VR holds the potential to improve mental well-being. There's a lot of apps already for mental well-being, and there's previous studies that shows potential, the feasibility of using VR for promoting mental well-being, and the acceptability for using VR as a technique to practice mindfulness. And also VR application design to foster social cohesion, teamwork, or co-presence could really reduce the isolation during in virtual schooling. But the specific affordances of VR meditation for promoting social well-being, dynamics, and design considerations are not yet well understood. And our app review suggests that co-presence and connectedness are not yet fully explored in the VR meditation area. We have come up with different design directions, but the basic idea is the two users participate in mindfulness task. In this case, the picture is showing a breath synchronization task where the users can synchronize their breaths and can see how their breaths synchronize, and can see each other's avatar and progress. And during the meditation, a tree, a flower, which is like metaphor that indicates the process, and upon the completion of the task, the flower or tree will be planted, and it's a place also for users later on to reflect on. So when we implement the prototype in Unreal Engine, we have features such as natural environment, which create a connectedness with nature, match the meditation practice theme. And we have this soft edge avatar provide a sense of co-presence, and we want this place to be a safe place because it has a lot of social VR app has code of conduct for safety and for the toxic behavior such as pushing on other users. We create this environment with no teleport or fast movement to minimize motion sickness and ease the onboarding process. And users' mental states are captured and visualized through Muse2 headband and Unreal BCI add-on. So we have a pilot study where users put on the VR headset to experience two demos. With the first one, a single user experience, and the second one was a two-user experience. And they're doing a think out during the process, and we interview them for their perspective. So some findings, some preliminary findings tell us in terms of how the users experience this app, the participant feels this place is safe and private for meditation. And overall, this exercise is intimate, soothing, and more rewarding compared to offline meditation because of the animation and tree planting and flower upon completion. And also it provides a very strong sense of connectedness with other people. In terms of components, they report that avatar is the key element that contributed to the immersive and co-presence, and they show a high tolerance to distraction and high willingness to share their thoughts when conducting the meditation with a friend or family member. And embodied social gestures such as touching the plant together to start the process or end the process create a very strong feeling of connectedness. And in terms of the interaction they seek or they want, the report they want to have the social support from the community, like a tree hole where they can share and read and comment on each other's feeling after the practice. And then also want to expand the collaborative mindfulness task beyond the meditation to something like more social and more entertaining, such as social games.
You got about a minute.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's all I have.
Perfect. Great. So, yeah. So our hope. Oh, and look. Looks much nicer. So, as we wrap up here, hopefully, what we're able to do is talk a little bit about some of the broad design patterns that we see happening with technology, and we can see some of the gaps and where there are gaps. A couple just quick things I think that I have learned from working with these folks are with Max's work, just thinking about what ways can we what ways can we try to build with some of these technologies that we have? I'm going to skip over that. And build interfaces kind of on top of, sorry, I'm trying to get to the, there we go. And build interfaces on top of things like Zoom, and thinking about ways that we can create collaboration that aren't necessarily like, you know, building everything in 3D as students, right? So I think that's something I really have enjoyed from Max's work, and go check it out. And, you know, again, from Lika's, just thinking about, well, how can we create new opportunities for people to really have co-presence and to do things, even giving even some of the most simple verbs. You can imagine, for example, building the kind of work that she's doing into virtual systems as like icebreakers, or imagine when we all got in this room, if we were to do something, not that we would all have to have a breath meditating, but we could all do something that gives us a sense of co-presence, because we're not just avatars, we are, you know, we're doing something coordinated. So these are just some of the ideas, some of the things we've been kicking around. I do want to, maybe as the last plug, just mention that, so, folks, I know some of you know folks from back when we had the GLS conference back in the day. We are kind of relaunching our GLS Center and getting some of this work going again. So if you're interested, reach out. We're probably going to have a reunion of some sort coming up. And that's it. I'll hand it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt and Max and Lika. Thank you, everybody. F4. And I'm going to do my best to kind of grab some of the links that are going into the chat, and we'll post them to our Discord channel as well, so that folks can access those after tonight. That'll be really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap us up here. The main event has finished. We're going to stick around for just a few minutes as we switch out speakers, but the live stream will now close. Thank you again to our videographers, Tony Q Studios, and the YouTube audience. Go ahead.